All right, let's dive into what seems like a major theological puzzle. We're talking about Calvinism and missionary work. It feels like these two things should be total opposites, right?
I mean, really think about it. If you believe that God has already decided who is going to be saved, why would you spend your life trying to save people? Why travel across the world, learn new languages, face all kinds of danger, if the outcome's already set? It's a really good question.
And look, this isn't just some random thought. It's a serious charge that's been leveled by respected scholars, like church historian William Istep. He just comes right out and says it. Logically, Calvinism is anti-missionary. That's the accusation we're going to look at.
So let's unpack that. Because on the surface, you can totally see the logic. If salvation is all up to God, then what's the point of human effort? It seems like missionary work would be, well, kind of pointless.
This is the caricature you hear all the time. It paints this picture of Calvinists as people who should logically just sit back and do nothing, since it's all a done deal. But here's the crazy part. This isn't what Calvinists themselves believe. Not even close.
And this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. Because once you stop debating the philosophy and start looking at the actual history, that whole anti-missionary charge just completely falls apart. In fact, the exact opposite seems to be true.
Far from holding people back, this theology seems to have launched the modern missionary movement. I mean, look at this timeline. You've got John Calvin himself sending missionaries to Brazil way back in the 1550s. Then there's John Eliot with Native Americans, William Carey in India, David Livingstone in Africa. The pattern is just undeniable. These guys were the pioneers.
You know, you might picture Calvin's Geneva as some stuffy, quiet, academic town. But it was actually a missionary sending machine. It was a hub, a training ground for people who were sent all over Europe, often into really dangerous situations. In just 1 year, 1561, they sent out 142 missionaries. Or take a guy like John Eliot in New England. This Calvinist pastor was so driven that he took on the incredibly difficult task of learning the Algonquian language. He didn't just learn it, he translated the entire Bible for the native people. And his work led to something like 3,600 conversions. His motivation? He believed God's sovereign plan gave him the power to keep going no matter what.
And how about this story? Everyone's heard of David Livingstone in Africa. Well, a reporter named Henry Stanley was sent to find him out in the jungle. Stanley was so blown away by Livingstone's unshakable faith that he, Stanley, became a Christian. And here's what Stanley said, which is just amazing. I was converted by him, although he had not tried to do it.
And then you have William Carey. This guy is a giant. He's known as the father of modern missions. He's the one who really kickstarted the global movement as we know it. And his theology? He was a devout Calvinistic Baptist. His work was incredible. He helped translate the Bible into around 40 different languages. And the list just keeps on going. All over the world. The first Protestant missionary to China, Robert Morrison. The apostle to Islam, Samuel Zwemer. The founder of the Presbyterian Church in Brazil, the missions that led to Korea having one of the largest Christian populations in Asia. Time and time again, the people on the front lines, breaking new ground, were driven by these deep convictions about God's sovereignty.
Okay, so if the history is crystal clear, we must be missing something in the theology. It brings us right back to the beginning. Why would this belief in God's sovereign grace actually fuel missions instead of killing it? What's the engine driving all of this?
Well, here's the core disconnect. The caricature says that God's choice makes our work meaningless, but the actual Calvinist logic is the complete opposite. It says God's choice is the very thing that guarantees our work is not meaningless. You see, the belief is that God doesn't just ordain the end, who will be saved, He also ordains the means to that end. And that means is people, messengers, sharing the gospel.
And this isn't some new idea. The Apostle Paul lays out this exact motivation in the Bible. He says he goes through all this hardship specifically for the sake of the elect. Knowing that God had already chosen people didn't make him sit back. It gave him the confidence to press on, knowing for a fact that his work would succeed because God was behind it.
So, the logic kind of flows in 3 simple steps. First, there's a clear command in the Bible. Go tell everyone the good news. Second, the theology says that this telling, this preaching, is the specific tool God has chosen to use to call people to Himself. And third, that leads to this incredible confidence. You know the mission will succeed. You know your efforts aren't a waste of time.
Now, a key idea that helps here is captured in an old theological phrase: sufficient for all, efficient for the elect.
Think of it like this. Imagine a medicine that is powerful enough to cure every single person on the planet. It's sufficient for all, but it only actually works, it's only efficient for those who take it. The offer of the gospel is genuinely for everyone, which is why you share it with everyone.
Okay, so that's the history and the theology. But what about right now? Does any of this hold up today? Let's bring it into the 21st century and look at some numbers.
So let's compare two big denominations in America. On the left, you've got the Southern Baptist Convention, which is mostly non-Calvinist. On the right, the Presbyterian Church in America, or PCA, which is very much Calvinist. This chart shows how many missionaries they each send out per church member. And wow, the difference is not subtle. The PCA's rate is way, way higher.
In fact, when you run the numbers, it's pretty staggering. The Calvinistic PCA supports 3 times more missionaries overseas per person than the SBC supports in total. That's foreign and domestic combined. It really suggests that this high view of God's sovereignty is, if anything, a powerful catalyst for getting out into the world.
And the long-term fruit of all this history is a massive shift in what Christianity looks like. The center of gravity for these churches isn't in Europe or America anymore. There are more of these Reformed Christians in Nigeria today than in all of North America. Same goes for Mexico. And now, in a wild reversal, missionaries are being sent from these countries back to the West.
Ultimately, what it all comes back to is this vision from the Bible of a global church made up of people from everywhere. Believing that God has already chosen his people from every single tribe and nation on earth, well, that's a pretty powerful reason to go and help find them.
I think the theologian Timothy George just nails it. He basically says that what sparks that world-changing faith isn't a small, manageable view of God. It's a massive one. It's the vision of a God who is totally in control, powerfully building his church across the globe. So we end by completely flipping that first question around. Instead of asking if this belief is a hindrance, maybe the real question is this: what if the single greatest motivation you could have for a really hard job is the rock-solid belief that God himself is guaranteed your success?
Thanks for digging into this with us on The Explainer. We'll see you next time.